Hey everyone, it's mostly Catual Commander. I'll see myself out. Today's game is inspired by my fat cat and channel mascot, Meatball. First up is Fat Cat Jetmir, Nexus of Revels being piloted by Kovacs, a token strategy. Chris built Rin and Seri, inseparable for the occasion, leaning more so into cats, and he'll get a bunch of dogs too. Hashtag Team Cat. Matt is playing Wasitora, which is cat tribal, but he could also pivot and go Voltron style if he has to. And last up is me playing Ahrabo, Roar of the World. This is cat tribal with a Voltron plan as well. Please consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. Keep in mind we're also on Discord, as well as Patreon if you'd like to try to support the channel. And of course, be on the lookout for Meatball in this video. He's so chunky. Kovacs started things off by playing a forest for turn, and passed to Chris, who also played a forest. You copycat. Oh, he played a Soul Ring too, so that's different. Then he passes the turn over to Matt, who draws and plays a command tower, and he plays a Soul Ring of his own. But this one is from 40k, so it's better. Then he passes the turn over to me, and I play a Plains as my land for turn before passing back to Kovacs. He drops Rootbound Crag, and then he uses both of those lands to cast an Arcane Signet, also from 40k. God. Chris's turn, he plays a Mountain as his land, and then he casts Rampant Growth. That will allow him to go grab a basic Plains, and then that'll enter the battlefield tapped before he passes the turn back over to Matt. He draws and plays a tapped Path of Ancestry. And then he casts Pridemalkin. Pridemalkin. This thing gets a +1/+1 counter, and things with +1/+1 counters have trample. Onto my turn, I drop a forest as my land, and then I cast Fleecemane Lion. A 3/3 for 2 mana. That's not bad. Then I pass the turn over to Kovacs. He plays a Plains of his own. And with that, he'll be able to cast Welcoming Vampire, so hopefully he'll be able to start drawing some cards. I mean, hopeful for him, not anybody else. We don't want him to draw cards. Kovacs passed to Chris, and Chris plays a Feldar Retreat. And with that, out onto the battlefield, he'll play his land for turn. In this case, it's Gavany Township. In theory, he could put +1/+1 counters on things. And because that entered the battlefield, he got a Cat Beast. Over to Matt's turn, a 40k Mountain as his land, and then he'll cast Wasitora, Nekoro Queen. That's a 5/4 with Flample that can make opponents sack stuff or make Matt tokens. He also got a Scry off of Path of Ancestry.
Now you're messing with BK's deck.
Alright. Hey, scrying is hard, okay? I got your back, Matt. He moves into combat, and he smacks Chris around for a couple of points of damage. Then he passes the turn over to me. I play a Prismatic Vista as my land for turn, and then I move into combat, triggering my commander's Eminence ability, giving +3/+3 to my cat, and I also pick on Chris.
I'll make an alliance on camera right here, right now, to not go after you for a good bit. If you help.
What's a good bit?
I'll be your friend.
Okay.
Attack you for 6.
Nope, I already said
What?
Crazy deal. Oh, a block. Okay.
That's dead. Chris, with some early game pressure, tried his hand at some politics. Kovacs and I are buds, and I cast Lost Leonin. That thing's got Infect. People love Infect. I activate my Prismatic Vista, finding a Plains before passing over to Kovacs, who plays Sokinzan, Crucible of Defiance. Then he casts Increasing Devotion, which is probably not good in a tokens deck. He gets 5 humans. This also triggers his Welcoming Vampire, drawing him a card. Before he passes the turn over to Chris, he plays his commander, Rin and Seri Inseparable. So now, when he casts a dog spell, he gets a cat. When he casts a cat spell, he gets a dog. He played a forest, which triggers his Feldar Retreat, getting him a Cat Beast. That doesn't work with his commander, though, because it has to be cast. On Matt's turn, he plays Dreadmalkin. Dreadmalkin? I don't know. Milk. Then he drops a Mountain as his land for turn, and then he casts Nature's Lore, getting another land. Can you believe it? In this case, he'll go and find a Cinderglade, because that is also a forest. See, it says it right there. It says forest. Then he moves into combat, still picking on Chris, and that's a Flampler, so that's in the air. He takes 5 points of damage, and Wasitora said, yo, kill one of your creatures. He passes the turn to me, and I play a Grasslands as my land for turn, and I move into combat, attacking Matt this time, with a +3/+3 for my commander, and dropping him to 34. Then I cast Pride Sovereign, so it gets +2/+2 because I have 2 other cats out. That's neat. Over to Kovacs, he plays Honored Heirloom. That's a mana rock that can do more than just mana rock stuff. He casts Banalish Marshal, so now his whole team is pumped, and that's probably good for him. And he plays conservatively and attacks Chris in the air with his now 3/4 Welcoming Vampire. So he'll drop him down to 29, and then he passes the turn over to Chris. He'll draw and play Miri, Weatherlight Duelist. This will trigger Rin and Seri, giving him a dog token. Sadly, we did not come prepared, so that white sleeve that says dog on it will have to do. Then Chris casts this.
Pride Sovereign.
Go. I got one of those.
Dog.
We did it.
Nope, see, he's not your friend. He's not your friend. Look how bad that high five is.
Yeah, you're supposed to look at each other's elbow when you do it.
It's the intentionally bad high five. It's a thing. We're starting.
Oh.
So these, do you want me to make another sleeve or just put 2 down?
Just put 2 down because
Sure.
they
I'll
probably
put it
attack.
There.
What?
Put it up there.
Top. No. On the top.
It's got the ons.
There
Yeah,
oh
there we
my
go.
god.
Oh my god.
Okay.
We're Pride Sovereign buddies now.
Eh.
Table banter. Matt plays a mountain again, and then he casts Nakatl War Pride. This thing's kind of weird. Sort of functions as a one-sided board wipe against one opponent by making a bunch of copies of itself and forcing your opponent to block them. It'll make 1 token per creature your opponents have. Anyway, onto my turn. I play a Plains as my land, and then I cast Aura Shards. So when one of my creatures enters the battlefield, I get to start nuking artifacts or enchantments. I crack into my grasslands and go find a temple garden before passing the turn. I really didn't have any good attacks, I thought. On Kovacs's turn, he casts Loyal Apprentice. So when that enters the battlefield, it actually wouldn't trigger Welcoming Vampire because Banalish Marshal is pumping his team. That's cool. He played a mountain, and with that, he cast his commander, Jetmir, Nexus of Revels. This thing's terrifying. It has 3 layers of continuous effects that just make his creatures disgusting. So Kovacs moves into combat, getting a Thopter thanks to Loyal Apprentice. He attacks not his good buddy BK, but I decide I should probably keep them alive to try to help me take down Kovacs. I exert my Pride Sovereign, getting 2 tokens entering the battlefield, triggering Aura Shards, killing his Thopter and his Arcane Signet, and this functionally keeps Chris alive. Then he uses Miri to block the Loyal Apprentice that has double strike. First strike damage resolves. That will make it so that there's only 8 creatures on Kovacs' board, therefore reducing one of the continuous effects of Jetmir. Kovacs' creatures lose double strike and 1 point of power, so only the first strike damage was dealt, and Matt decided to take all of it to the face, dropping to 9. Kovacs passes, and Chris plays Loyal Warhound. So this will trigger Rin and Seri, inseparable, getting him a green 1/1 cat token, as well as going and finding a Plains that enters the battlefield tapped. That will trigger Feldar Retreat, getting him a cat beast as well. And with those tokens out onto the battlefield, he decides to cast Second Harvest, which will copy all of his tokens that he has out. That's pretty neat. That brings him up to 4 dogs, 2 cats, and 2 cat beasts. Not that bad. Then he passes the turn over to Matt, who plays an Assassin's Trophy on Kovacs' Jetmir. So that will kill him dead, but Kovacs gets to go find a Plains entering the battlefield untapped. Matt follows that up by casting Falthis, Shadowcat Familiar, giving Death Touch and Menace to his commander. He got to scry off that, and then he moves into combat, swinging his commander at Kovacs and the Nakatl War Pride at Chris, therefore making 11 copies of Nakatl War Pride. Chris has to declare blocks against all of those Nakatls. Kovacs took his beats and had to sacrifice a human token. Chris blocks the OG Nakatl with Rin and Seri, killing it dead, but 3 still sneak by, as well as clear all of Chris's board, aside from Rin. Then he passes the turn over to me, and I play a Plains. Then I cast Loxodon Warhammer. And with that out onto the battlefield, I'll equip it to my Fleece Mane Lion. I'll move into combat at Matt, triggering Ahrabo. He decides to block with 2 of his creatures, therefore only dropping to 3, but I'll still gain 9 points of life, and then I'll pass the turn over to Kovacs. I wanted to be using my Lost Leonin, but it doesn't seem to have lined up proper yet. On Kovacs' turn, he plays Tendershoot Dryad, and then it Ascend checks, giving him the city's blessing. He then joins the dance and creates 2 human tokens. And here he'll draw a card off of Welcoming Vampire before moving into combat at Matt, which is enough to kill him dead. So unfortunately, Matt gets knocked out of the game. Sorry, buddy. Then, Kovacs passes the turn to Chris, and on his upkeep, he gets a Sapperling token. Chris plays Pack Leader, triggering Rin and Seri, getting him another green 1/1 cat token. Following that, he casts King of the Pride. This will give all of his other cats +2/+1, and also get him a doggo because of Rin and Seri. He moves into combat, swinging his commander at Kovacs. Valuing his token army, he just takes the beats, feeling very unthreatened at this point. On my upkeep, he gets another Sapperling token. I cast Sacred Cat, because honestly, it's about all I got. That will trigger Aura Shards, so at least I get to nuke Kovacs' Mono Rock. It's not going to keep him off of casting his commander, but I'm trying. I move into combat with Fleece Mane, triggering Ahrabo. Kovacs takes 9 points of life, and then I move to 57. On Kovacs' turn, he gets yet another Sapperling. He recasts his commander, Jetmir, Nexus of Revels. Certainly, has more than 9 creatures on the board, and he moves into combat at both Chris and I. And after we busted out the Abacus, we determined that Kovacs swung for lethal damage on both of us, making him the winner. Congratulations, Kovacs. Jetmir can be a nasty fat cat, that's for sure. Speaking of fat cat, here's Meatball. He's in my fridge. Well, there you have it. That's our Oops All Cats game, inspired by our channel mascot, Meatball. Let us know what you think in the comments. Which cat commander do you think Meatball would play? If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel, like the content you've been enjoying, and as always, thank you for watching.